Hello and welcome again to another episode of Battle Ready. Where today I thought we'd touch on something that's it's not a new thing. Mm-hmm. It's not a new thing. It's been around for a while, but that is 3D printing, and especially is 3D printing the future of wargaming. Okay, I don't think it's the current of wargaming. It's not the present, right? There's a lot of things that need to be smoothed out with 3D printing and pricing and all that kind of stuff. But presumably, that's all going to get better in the future. And 3D printing will become, if not quite as good, but probably somewhat close to 2D printing, I think, in the future. So the question is 3D printing the future of wargaming? What do you think?
I think maybe.
Oh, good way to go out on a limb there. Wait. Woo, taking a hot take here. Yeah, real brave position you've staked out for yourself. All right, tell me what you think.
I feel like, well, it's possible that they will be designed for like models and you use it to design models. Mm-hmm. Unless you took in a lot of the work, you yourself would be able to just say, oh, let me print some gore grunters real quick.
Well, let's say in the future, maybe 10 years from now, you could.
In that case, yeah.
Yeah, but let's say that 3D printing gets to the point where you could print up a gore grunta, and let's say it gets to the point that your gore grunta, quality-wise, sharpness, everything, is the same as the plastic kits we have now. So again, clearly not the present of wargaming, right? That's a different thing. But in the future, if 3D technology, continues to advance, and let's say it advances to that point, do you think that becomes wargaming?
Yes, but that would probably mean Games Workshop sinks.
You think Games Workshop would sink?
Yeah.
You don't think they would just charge super expensive prices for their printable gore gruntas? I think they would. I think they would charge super expensive prices no matter what they sell.
Yeah, and then what they do, or what the people does, is says, okay, well, we'll just buy plastic and print them ourselves. Games Workshop would sink if
but you have to buy the file, right? So they'd be selling the files instead of the plastic.
Then I'm sure there'd be someone who pirates the file.
Well, there's people who pirate the plastic now too. But yeah, you're right. That there would be a bigger problem with that. I'm going to take the no position.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. One, I think, and I should get this out in front, I'm old. And so I'm worried a little bit that this is like old man yells at cloud, like, back in my day, we made it out of plastic and we liked it that way, right? I don't know. So maybe there's some of that. But I also think that 3D printing removes my favorite aspect of the hobby. The building. And you look at other models, like model airplanes, model tanks, stuff like that. You don't use those for a war game, usually. You can just buy the model, and people like to build the model. There's Gundam, right? You don't use those for games. You just build and buy the model, and then build the model, and have a good time building the model. And I think if you remove that, which 3D printing does, I think that removes a big chunk of the hobby for a lot of people. Now, some people, I think, way prefer painting.
Yep.
So some people might look at that and say, great, I don't have to build this nonsense anymore. Especially I can just press the button and it prints. Beautiful. But I think there are enough people that want to build, that's part of what they want to do, that 3D printing would be a turnoff to them. Mm-hmm. So even if I could see a world in which there was 3D printing alongside models, mm-hmm. but I don't think the models will ever go away for that reason. You know what I think they could do with 3D prints, though?
Use it to make models like GW turns their giant factories into just lines and lines of 3D printers.
Well, I'm sure at some point, I think there's that. But two things. First, in the far future,
40K.
Maybe not that far, but in the far future,
20K.
Let's say that they can 3D print in color. So now you can print up a gore grunta basically fully painted, right? That now I'm like, ooh, I do like building, but I think I hate painting more. So now I'm back in the game. I was anti 3D print, but they pulled me back in with the color, right? So maybe. But one place I could totally see 3D prints being used for is right now, every so often, Games Workshop will come out with like
a limited model
shoulder pads for Blood Angels specific. And so you could go out and buy those specific shoulder pads and then put them on your guys and be like, ooh, my Blood Angels have a special shoulder pad. Ooh, my Dark Angels. Ooh, my Raven Guard, or whatever. And I could totally see companies, including Games Workshop, say, all right, we're not going to make that stuff anymore. We're not going to pour resin for stupid shoulder pads. But you can buy our files and you can 3D print the shoulder pads. Now, they'd have to have some kind of copy protection. People would still probably figure out a way around it. Right? This is how it is. But I could totally see 3D printing as a supplement to the sort of selling the physical molds and models for stuff like that. Or like even, you could go beyond Space Marine chapters, right? You could go into Iron Jaw stuff and be like, okay, in your model, the chest plate is part number 54. But if you buy this file, you can 3D print a different part 54 that still fits the model, but looks different in some way, right? And so in that way, it's like, ooh, I can 3D print these little customizable things and, specific to particular models. And I think I could totally see that as coming into the hobby.
Yeah.
How else do you see 3D printing?
Like I said, just lines of 3D printers in factories like GW, and that replaces the pour molten plastic into a mold. That way you don't have to worry about mold decay.
Yeah, I guess I'm talking about from the consumer standpoint. Like if 3D printing was good, right? So we're in the future. But if 3D printing was good, is there anything you think where you would feel like I'd rather have the plastic model than the 3D printed model? Assuming the 3D print quality was comparable to plastic models. I mean, there's always going to be some pluses and minuses, right? But let's assume it's pretty comparable.
I feel like what I would lose is the ability to paint it and make it my own.
But you would, in the far future, they'll have color 3D printing, I'm sure. Maybe after I'm gone.
Yeah.
But
no, you'll be here forever.
But I could see the 3D, when you 3D print it out, if it's just as sharp and just as good, you can just paint that the same way you could a plastic model.
But I feel like there's sort of I guess in the far future you would say nostalgia to be like buying the plastic kit, cutting it open, and building it.
Oh, I get that. So let's not go to the far future. Let's go to the medium term, right? You as a wargamer have an option between buying the plastic kit or 3D printing your Gorgrunta. Which is more attractive to you?
I feel like just by that, the 3D printing it is more attractive because you get the Gorgrunta instantly. But what I think that we haven't talked about is printer malfunction.
Yeah. So in the near term, I don't think it's taken over. In the near term, I think it's pretty niche. I think it's something that really it's sort of your own hobby because you have to get into different kinds of filaments and different adjustments. It's a whole thing.
Buying a printer.
Getting a printer, making sure you can vent it if it's that kind of printer. So yeah, but I'm talking about in the future when all those things get sort of wrinkled out and it's as easy to use as a normal 2D printer.
Those are easy to use.
I was gonna say they can be a little persnickety for sure, but they're easy enough to use that most people have one and can use them, right? So I think that's a good point that you do get the model right away. I think one of the biggest disappointments for people new to the hobby is they see the packaging on the back, like, oh, these witch elves, let's keep with Gorgruntas.
Yeah.
These Gorgruntas are looking so cool. This is awesome. I'm gonna take this home. And they take it home and they open it up and it's just little bits of plastic. And I'm like, what
have I done?
Oh my, I was gonna go to bed. I don't have time to build this tonight. I didn't know I had to, and it can be a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, right? A
letdown. Yeah, for sure. So I think 3D printing does nicely solve that problem for sure. Yeah, I think many people, maybe even most, probably even most, would be in your camp. I think the people for whom the building is the funnest part is probably in the minority, I think.
Yeah.
Certainly me. But when I look on and to fan websites and YouTube, all those different things, lots of people out there are discussing painting tips and how to paint and the joy of painting and different paint. so few people are discussing building tips and how to build and what's the best way to build and this and that. And I think some of that is because painting is usually, typically, a more creative process. So there's probably more fodder there for sure. But people seem to go a little bit gaga over the painting rather than the building. So I think those of us who enjoy the building are probably in the minority. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, but for me, like I said, but I'm old. So maybe I can't envision all the ways in which it's better. But I would never want to get rid of the building unless they could 3D print in color, and then I wouldn't have to paint it. Then it would be a sacrifice I'm willing to make to get a painted model that I don't have to paint. I'd be like, oh, okay.
One thing I could see with 3D color printing is it would be an exorbitantly higher cost.
Yeah, oh, for sure it would be. For sure. But in the far enough future, right, those prices come down. It's like when you look...
We're getting too far into 40K.
Right. When you look at old, like from the 80s, computers, and they're like, this one has 4 megabytes of RAM. And it was like thousands of dollars in today's money, right? Thousands and thousands of dollars. And now you can buy for a few $100s a laptop that's like this big and has gigs of solid state RAM, right? It's
You'd look at that old one and just be like, you're sad.
Yeah. That's so funny. You got, 4 megabytes of RAM. You send people to the moon. That time? Was I alive during that time? And for the oldest ones, I was alive. I never had a computer that small, though. Small.
No, they were giant.
I mean, a personal computer, back when we had personal computers. But, so let us know in the comments below your thoughts on 3D printing. Now, I know it's not the present of wargaming. It's not there yet. But I think it's pretty inevitable that it's going to get there. Maybe it'll take longer, maybe it'll be shorter, but I think we're going to get to a place where 3D printing becomes quite common. And when it does, assuming quality is comparable, what would you prefer? Would you prefer to buy and print a model, or would you prefer to buy a plastic kit that you build and then paint it up from there? I'd be really interested to know, because for me, unless it prints in color, I'm going to throw that out there again. But for me, I would much rather have the building and at least get that fun before I have to slog through the paint.
That's in like 29K.
It's 29K. And then, just before the heresy.
Yeah,
all right, well.
You finally can print in color.
Let us know in the comments below your thoughts. Do you want to print or do you want to build? This has been another episode of Battle Ready. Thanks so much for watching.